When my daughter told me, "Go find somewhere else to die, you're useless now," I packed my bags like the obedient mom I'd always been. 3 days later, I found myself sitting in a lawyer's office, realizing that my so-called loving husband had been playing the longest, cruelest game of chess. And trust me, Emily was about to learn that sometimes the pawn turns into the queen. If you're listening, hit subscribe, and tell me where you're tuning in from. Let me explain how I went from being a homeless widow to the woman holding every single card. Because honey, this story has more twists than a pretzel factory. Just 2 months ago, I was Linda Parker, devoted wife for 43 years and mother to one spectacularly ungrateful daughter. When my husband, Daniel, dropped dead of a heart attack at 71, I thought my world had ended. Emily swooped in during my grief like a vulture in designer heels, pretending to care about how hard this must be for me. "Mom, you can't possibly manage this big house alone," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "The stairs, the upkeep, all those memories. It's not healthy." I should have noticed the calculation behind every word. Daniel had always adored Emily, his little princess who could do no wrong. When she married that hotshot investment banker, Ryan, and started popping out grandkids, Daniel doted on them all.
And me?
I was just the woman cooking, cleaning, and making sure the house never fell apart. After the funeral, Emily became relentless. She'd drag Ryan over for family dinners, and together they'd corner me with glossy real estate brochures and retirement community pamphlets. "Mom, these places are amazing," she'd chirp. "Friends your own age, activities, no stress." What they really meant was, no inheritance to divide, no inconvenient mother hanging around. The final blow came last Tuesday. I'd been living in what Emily now called our house for 6 weeks since Daniel's death, still sleeping in the guest room because I couldn't face packing up our bedroom. Emily showed up unannounced with Ryan and 2 giant suitcases. "Mom, we've made a decision," she said cheerfully. "Ryan got promoted, and we need to move into town right away. This house is perfect for us." I just stared at her, stunned. "Move in? But this is my home." For a split second, her mask slipped, and I saw the cold truth in her eyes. "Actually, Mom," she said smoothly, "according to Dad's will, I inherited everything. The house, the investments, all of it. I've been letting you stay here out of kindness, but it's time for you to find your own place." Her words hit me like a punch to the chest. "Emily, surely this is a mistake." "No mistake," she replied. "Dad knew I'd protect his legacy better than you ever could. You never understood money. You were just the wife. Just the wife." 43 years reduced to those 3 little words. Then came the killing blow. "Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now." So I packed up my life in a daze. 43 years of marriage crammed into 2 suitcases and 1 small box of photographs. Emily stood in the doorway, checking her watch like I was making her late. "There's a really nice senior complex on Maple Street," she offered, with the enthusiasm of someone recommending a good diner. "Super affordable. I'm sure they've got openings." Affordable. My daughter was inheriting $33 million, and she wanted me tucked away in what was basically a welfare facility for the elderly. Ryan loaded my suitcases into their BMW with the efficiency of a man hauling out garbage. "Linda, you'll love having your independence again," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. "No more worrying about house repairs or property taxes." What he really meant was, no more home. As we drove away, I watched my house, Daniel's house, Emily's house now, shrink in the rearview mirror. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent more than 40 years turning that place into a home, throwing Emily's birthday parties there, nursing Daniel through his illness, keeping up every detail he cared about. And now, I was being hauled off to a budget motel like some unwanted guest who'd overstayed her welcome. The Sunset Inn was exactly what you'd imagine from a place charging $49 a night. Thin walls, thinner towels, and a carpet that looked like it had survived 3 decades of bad decisions. Emily pressed $200 into my hand like she was tipping a hotel maid. "This should hold you for a few days while you figure things out," she said lightly. "I'll have Ryan transfer some money into your account once we get through Dad's paperwork." Some money, from my own inheritance. After they drove off, I sat on the sagging mattress, trying to process the nightmare. In just 3 hours, I had gone from grieving widow to homeless senior citizen. The daughter I had raised, loved, and sacrificed everything for had tossed me aside like an expired prescription. But in that dingy motel room, something started gnawing at me. Daniel had always been meticulous about his affairs. He was borderline obsessive about organizing documents, keeping everything in perfect order. Years ago, he'd shown me the will himself, explaining every detail, making sure I understood his wishes. And I knew, without a shred of doubt, that what Emily claimed wasn't in it. Daniel could be traditional, sometimes stubborn, even a little patronizing about money. But he wasn't cruel. The man who had held my hand when my mother passed, who surprised me with flowers every single anniversary, would never leave me destitute. The next morning, I used the motel's shaky Wi-Fi to look up Daniel's attorney, Charles Whitman, the same lawyer who'd handled our home purchase and other business over the years. His office was downtown, a 20-minute bus ride that cost me precious cash, but I knew I had to go. Mr. Whitman was a dignified man in his 70s, kind eyes peeking out from behind wire-rimmed glasses. When his secretary told him Mrs. Parker was here about her husband's estate, he looked genuinely surprised. "Linda, my dear, I was beginning to wonder when you'd come by. I tried calling your house several times, but Emily said you were traveling." Traveling. That was the story my daughter had fed him. "Mr. Whitman, I need to ask you about Daniel's will." He frowned. "Of course. Didn't Emily give you a copy?" I handed her the original and several duplicates right after the reading. My stomach dropped. "The reading? Linda, you were supposed to be there. Emily told me you were too distraught, that she'd handle everything and make sure you received your inheritance." The blood drained from my face. "Mr. Whitman, I was never told there was a reading. Emily told me she inherited everything." His expression shifted from confusion to alarm. He reached for a thick file, his movements suddenly sharp and urgent. "That's impossible. Your husband's will is crystal clear about your inheritance." He pulled out the document, and my breath caught when I recognized Daniel's careful signature at the bottom. It was witnessed and notarized. But as Mr. Whitman read aloud, the truth became undeniable. Emily had lied about everything. "I, Daniel Joseph Parker, being of sound mind and body, do hereby leave to my beloved wife, Linda Marie Parker, the following: our primary residence at 847 Oakwood Drive, including all furnishings and personal effects. Additionally, I grant her 70% of all financial assets, investments, and accounts, totaling approximately $23 million. My head started spinning. $23 million. The house. 70% of everything. Mr. Whitman kept reading, his voice dropping into something heavier, more deliberate. "To my daughter, Emily Parker Hayes, I leave $10 million, to be held in trust. Distributions begin on her 45th birthday, and only if she treats her mother with respect after my death. Conditional. On how she treated me." Daniel had known. Somehow, he had seen this coming. "Mr. Whitman." My voice cracked. "Emily told me I inherited nothing. She moved into my house. She gave me $200 and told me to go find a senior facility." The old lawyer's face turned red with anger. "Linda, what Emily has done is elder abuse and fraud. These are serious felonies. She must have shown you forged papers, maybe an earlier draft. Your husband updated his will 6 months before he died, specifically because he was worried about Emily's attitude toward money and her growing entitlement." The room tilted around me. All those moments when Emily had rolled her eyes at me during family dinners, brushed off my opinions, laughed at me when I tried to join their conversations about vacations or Ryan's business deals. Daniel had noticed. He had been paying attention. And he had acted. "There's more, Linda," Mr. Whitman continued. "The trust clause says if Emily fails to treat you with dignity and respect after Daniel's death, her entire $10 million reverts to you instead." I stared at him, stunned. "Are you saying?" He nodded firmly. "I'm saying your daughter just cost herself $10 million. Her inheritance now belongs to you. You're not inheriting $23 million, Linda. You're inheriting $33 million, plus the house and everything in it." The irony hit so perfectly, it was almost funny. Emily had been so eager to grab her inheritance that she had triggered the very clause designed to protect me from her greed. "What do I do now?" I asked, barely keeping my voice steady. For the first time since Daniel's death, Mr. Whitman's smile carried genuine warmth. "Now, my dear, we call the police. And then, We call Emily and let her know she's about to get the shock of her life.
Can she fight this? I asked.
With what money? He said dryly. Every account she thought she controlled already belongs to you. Every investment, every bank account, every asset except the house is frozen while we investigate her fraud. I thought about Emily sitting in my house, probably sketching out renovation plans, flipping through catalogs, maybe even ordering furniture with money she thought was hers. Ryan was no doubt calculating how this windfall would boost his investment portfolio. Neither of them had any clue that in about 6 hours, their entire world was going to collapse. Mr. Whitman's office became command central for what he jokingly called Operation Justice. He called the police, the banks, and even hired a private investigator, while I sat in his leather chair, still struggling to take in the scale of Emily's betrayal. The forgeries are sophisticated, Detective Martinez said as she examined the fake will Emily had shown me.
This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment scheme. Someone planned this carefully. You think Emily had help? I asked.
Almost certainly, the detective replied. Creating documents this convincing requires knowledge and the right connections. We knew we had to dig into whether Ryan, or someone in his financial circle, had helped pull this off. Within 2 hours, every account was locked down. Emily's shiny new credit cards, the ones she thought were tied to her inheritance, got declined. The utilities she'd already moved into her name? Suspended, pending ownership verification. At exactly 3:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Emily's name lit up the screen. Mom, where are you? The bank says Dad's accounts are frozen.
Something's wrong.
Hello, Emily. I'm sitting in Charles Whitman's office.
You remember him, right? Dad's attorney? The one who read the real will to an empty room, while you told him I was traveling.
Silence. Then her voice, tight.
Mom, I don't know what you think you discovered.
I discovered that you're a liar and a thief. And I also discovered that your father was far smarter than either of us realized.
You don't understand. I was protecting you from the complexity of managing all that money.
You've never dealt with investments.
Oh,
I understand perfectly. You forged legal documents, committed fraud, and kicked your 67-year-old mother out of her own home because you thought I was too stupid to notice. Her voice sharpened, desperate. Mom, you're confused. You're grieving, and someone's clearly taking advantage of your emotional state. The audacity left me breathless. Even caught red-handed, Emily was still trying to twist the story. Emily, let me be very clear.
You never inherited anything.
And the $10 million your father left you? That's mine now too, thanks to a lovely little clause about treating me with dignity and respect.
That's impossible.
Detective Martinez is sitting right here if you'd like to discuss how impossible fraud charges will be. The line went dead quiet. I could practically hear her brain scrambling for an angle. Mom, please, can we just meet and talk about this reasonably? I'm sure we can work something out. Oh, we'll meet, sweetheart, at the courthouse, when you're arraigned.
You wouldn't dare press charges against your own daughter.
Something hard and final clicked inside me.
Watch me.
I hung up. Mr. Whitman was grinning like a proud uncle.
How long before she's arrested? I asked.
Detective Martinez already has enough for a warrant. They'll pick her up tonight.
And Ryan?
His financial records are being subpoenaed. If he helped with those forgeries, he's going down too. A text pinged on my phone. Mom, please don't do this.
Think about the grandchildren.
I handed it to the detective. She gave a grim little smile.
Classic manipulation.
Textbook behavior in cases like this. I typed back, I am thinking about them. They deserve to see what happens when you steal from your own family. 20 minutes later, Ryan called. Linda, surely we can resolve this privately. Emily made some poor decisions, but calling the police is excessive. Ryan, did you help her forge those documents?
That's not.
Linda, you have to understand the pressure Emily was under. She was worried about your mental state, your ability to manage so much money.
So that's a yes. It wasn't malicious.
She truly believed she was protecting you.
By throwing me out of my house and telling me to find somewhere to die?
Ryan went silent.
Here's what's going to happen, I said.
You and Emily are both going to be arrested. You're both going to face federal fraud charges.
And I'm going to be sitting in my house.
Be reasonable, Linda, Ryan had said. But I'd already been reasonable for 43 years, and look where that had gotten me. At 8:30 that night, the police arrested Emily while she was out at Larkspur, having dinner with Ryan and another couple, apparently celebrating her inheritance. According to Detective Martinez, she screamed about false arrest and demanded to call her lawyer, who, as it turned out, was just one of Ryan's golf buddies with zero experience in criminal law.
Ryan didn't last much longer.
He was arrested at his office the next morning. The forensic accountant traced the forged documents straight back to a printing company Ryan's firm used, the same one they relied on to create fake investment prospectuses. My son-in-law, it seemed, had quite the criminal resume. Whether Emily didn't know or simply chose not to see it, I'll never know. That night, for the first time in 43 years, I slept in the master bedroom of my house. Emily had already started moving her things in, replacing Daniel's careful order with her chaos of designer clothes and high-end cosmetics. I packed it all into garbage bags and left them on the porch. She could collect them after she made bail.
The house felt different now.
Not because Daniel was gone, but because I was finally seeing it as mine. For decades, I'd treated it like Daniel's sanctuary, decorated to his taste, arranged for his comfort, shaped by his vision of how we should live. But as I looked around with clear eyes, I realized how little of me had ever existed within these walls.
That was going to change.
Around noon, Charles Whitman called with updates. Emily's bail is set at $50,000. With all her accounts frozen, she'll have to find someone else to cover it.
What about Ryan? I asked. 200,000.
The judge wasn't impressed with his history of financial crimes. Did you know your son-in-law was already under investigation for securities fraud?
No, I hadn't.
Then again, I'd been excluded from most financial conversations. Emily and Ryan had always talked down to me about money, simplifying things as if I were a child.
They were about to find out just how much I truly understood.
Charles, I want to make some changes to the house. Emily had contractors lined up to renovate.
I'd like to go ahead with some of those plans, but under my own vision.
Excellent idea, he said warmly. It's your home now.
Do whatever makes you happy.
What made me happy was undoing every assumption Emily had made about my inheritance. She wanted to gut the kitchen, rip out the hardwood, and turn Daniel's study into a wine cellar. Instead, I'd make the study into an art studio.
And that wine cellar? A library.
Not long after, my phone rang.
Unknown number. Mrs. Parker?
This is Janet Cooper from Channel 7 News. We understand you've been the victim of a major elder fraud case involving your daughter.
Would you be willing to share your story? Word was spreading.
In a city like this, the arrest of a prominent investment banker and his wife for defrauding his elderly mother-in-law was big news. Miss Cooper, I appreciate your interest, but I'm not ready to make public statements, I said carefully. I understand this is difficult, she replied, but your story could help other seniors recognize the warning signs of financial abuse by their own families.
She wasn't wrong.
How many women my age were being manipulated by their adult children, treated like obstacles instead of mothers? If I decided to tell my story, I asked, would I have control over how it's presented?
Absolutely.
We could do a sit-down interview, and you'd have approval over the final edit. I thought about Emily, probably sitting in a jail cell right then, still believing this was just a misunderstanding she could charm her way out of. Miss Cooper, let me get back to you.
I might have quite a story to tell.
After hanging up, I poured myself a glass of that expensive wine Ryan had sent us last Christmas. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was sipping wine bought with my own money, in my own house, while weighing whether to humiliate my daughter on live television. Life had certainly taken an unexpected turn. At exactly 7 the next morning, the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Emily standing on my porch, still in yesterday's clothes, looking like she'd aged 5 years overnight. Somehow, she'd made bail. I opened the door but didn't step aside.
Mom, please. We need to talk. We talked yesterday, I said evenly. You told me to find somewhere to die. I found somewhere to live instead.
Her eyes were red and swollen, her perfect composure gone.
I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But I'm still your daughter. Are you? I asked.
Because daughters don't usually forge legal documents to steal their mother's inheritance.
I wasn't stealing. I was. She stopped, clearly scrambling for a word that didn't sound criminal. You were what, Emily?
I was trying to protect you from making poor financial decisions.
You've never managed this kind of money.
Even now, after an arrest, after everything, she still couldn't say the truth out loud. In her mind, she was the victim of my impossible expectations.
Emily, I said quietly, let me tell you something your father told me 6 months before he died.
He said he was worried about your sense of entitlement, your obsession with money, and the way you treat people you think are beneath you.
Her face drained of color. Dad never said that. Yes, he did.
He said you reminded him of his sister, Eleanor, beautiful, charming, and completely incapable of thinking about anyone but yourself.
He told me he was changing the will because he was afraid of what you'd do to me if you had control. That's a lie. I pulled out my phone.
Actually, it's not. Your father recorded a message. A video, meant to be played if you ever contested the will, or if you treated me poorly after his death.
Emily stared at the phone like it might bite her. He knew, sweetheart. He knew exactly who you were beneath all that charm.
The only thing he didn't predict was just how far you'd go. Play it, she whispered. I tapped the screen, and Daniel's voice filled the morning air. Calm, steady, but devastating. If you're hearing this, Emily, it means my fears about your character were justified.
I hoped I was wrong.
I hoped my daughter had more integrity than I suspected. But if Linda is playing this, then you've proven me right in the worst possible way.
Emily sank onto the porch steps as his words continued.
I spent 43 years watching your mother sacrifice her dreams, her ambitions, her independence, to care for this family. She worked part-time jobs to help pay for your college while I built my business. She postponed her own education, gave up career opportunities, and poured herself into being the wife and mother she thought we needed. And now, by the time you hear this, you'll realize that treating your mother poorly has cost you everything.
I hope it was worth it.
The recording lasted another 3 minutes, each line as sharp as a blade, slicing through every excuse and self-deception Emily had ever clung to. By the end, she wasn't crying the pretty manipulative tears she'd used her whole life. She was sobbing, broken and raw.
He hated me, she whispered. No, Emily.
Your father loved you enough to hope you'd prove him wrong.
But you chose to prove him right instead.
She looked up at me, mascara streaked down her cheeks.
What happens now?
Now, I said, you deal with the consequences of your choices. The fraud charges, the investigation, and the public humiliation once this story hits the news.
Her face twisted. The news?
Channel 7 wants to interview me about elder financial abuse.
I'm thinking about saying yes.
Emily's composure broke completely.
Mom, please.
Think about what this will do to the grandchildren, to Ryan's career, to our whole family.
I am thinking about it, I told her.
I'm thinking about how you didn't consider any of that when you decided to commit multiple felonies. She pushed herself up slowly, looking older and more defeated than I'd ever seen her. I know you won't believe this, but I never meant for it to go this far.
I wanted the money, the security, the status. I wanted to never worry about anything again.
And for the first time since this nightmare began, Emily was telling the truth. I believe you, sweetheart. But wanting something doesn't excuse destroying people to get it. She nodded, tears still pouring down her face.
What can I do to fix this? You can start by admitting what you did was wrong.
Not misguided, not protective, not complicated, wrong.
Completely, unforgivably wrong.
And then you can face the consequences with some dignity, instead of trying to manipulate your way out of them.
Emily studied me for a long moment.
Maybe for the first time, she wasn't looking at the pushover mother she'd always known. She was seeing the woman who had just outplayed her entirely.
I deserved this, didn't I? Yes, Emily. You absolutely did.
3 days after Emily's porch confession, Ryan's mother showed up at my front door. Eleanor Hayes was exactly what I expected, perfectly coiffed, dripping in jewelry, and radiating the kind of entitlement that comes from 3 generations of inherited wealth. Linda, we need to discuss this situation rationally, she said. I let her in, curious what kind of alternate reality the Hayes family had cooked up to explain their son's felony charges. Eleanor settled into my living room like she was granting me an audience. Kevin made some poor choices, obviously. But prosecuting him seems rather vindictive, don't you think?
Vindictive, I repeated.
Your son helped steal my inheritance and threw me out of my own home.
Kevin was following Emily's lead. He didn't understand the full situation.
She was actually trying to pin her son's crimes on my daughter.
I had to admire the audacity.
Mrs. Hayes, Ryan created forged legal documents. That's not following someone's lead, that's conspiracy to commit fraud. Kevin's lawyer believes we can reach a settlement that benefits everyone. You get your house back. Emily faces appropriate consequences. And Kevin avoids the publicity of a trial.
Appropriate consequences.
As if Emily's crimes were nothing more than a social misstep.
What kind of settlement? I asked.
Eleanor's smile widened, convinced she'd found her opening. Kevin's family is prepared to compensate you for your inconvenience. Let's say $2 million, in exchange for dropping the charges against him.
$2 million.
To forgive the man who'd helped steal $33 million from me. Mrs. Hayes, your son participated in a scheme that cost me everything I owned. You think $2 million covers that?
Linda, be realistic.
Kevin has a career, children, a reputation to protect. Sending him to prison serves no one.
It serves justice.
And for the first time, Eleanor's polished facade cracked.
Justice?
You're destroying multiple families over money you never would have known how to manage anyway. There it was, the same condescending tone that had poisoned my relationship with Emily for years. In their world, I was just the help who had forgotten her place.
Mrs. Hayes, I think we're done here.
Linda, please reconsider.
$5 million. Final offer.
$5 million. The number was staggering, but the principle was not negotiable.
My answer is no.
Eleanor rose, her poise snapping back into place like a mask.
Very well.
But you should know that Ryan's legal team has uncovered some interesting information about your husband's business practices. It would be unfortunate if that were to come out during the trial. The threat was clear, but instead of fear, I felt only curiosity.
What kind of information?
The kind that might make you reconsider who the real criminal in this situation is. After she left, I called Charles immediately. Linda, whatever they think they've found, it doesn't change the facts of Emily and Ryan's crimes.
But could it affect the case? Potentially.
If they can muddy the waters, cast doubt on Daniel's character or business practices, it might influence a jury. I sat with the thought of my husband, of our marriage, of all the secrets that could be hidden inside 43 years of shared life. Charles, I want to know everything about Daniel's business. Every deal, every partner, every possible irregularity.
Linda, are you sure? Sometimes the past is better left alone.
The Hayes family is threatening to drag Daniel's memory through the mud to protect their criminal son.
I'd rather face the truth first.
That evening, I sat in Daniel's study, my study now, and began going through his files one by one. He had been obsessively organized, every document labeled and dated. But the deeper I dug, the more things didn't add up.
Payments to shell companies. Consulting fees that were far too high. Partnerships with firms that barely existed on paper.
By midnight, I had uncovered something that shook everything I thought I knew about my husband. Charles put me in touch with a sharp-eyed private investigator named Carol Chen, who specialized in financial crimes. She spent 6 hours in that study, photographing documents, connecting dots, and building what she called the real picture of your husband's empire. When she was done, she looked me straight in the eye. Mrs. Parker, your husband was running a sophisticated money laundering operation through his consulting firm. We're talking about millions of dollars in illegal transactions over the past decade.
The words hit like a punch. That's impossible. Daniel was the most honest man I knew.
I'm sorry, but the evidence is overwhelming. He was washing money for organized crime families, using his legitimate business as cover. I stared at the spread of documents on the desk. Invoices for services that were never performed. Contracts with companies that didn't exist. Payment schedules that lined up exactly with known criminal operations.
How long has this been going on? I whispered.
Based on these records, at least 12 years.
Probably longer. 12 years.
All while I was planning dinner parties, hosting charity galas, smiling at neighbors, My husband was secretly propping up criminal enterprises.
Carol's voice grew even more somber. And there's more. The $10 million Daniel left to Emily?
That money came directly from laundered funds. If the FBI uncovers this, they'll seize everything as proceeds of crime.
The room started spinning.
Everything, the house, the accounts, the investments, it was all at risk.
Unless what? I asked.
Carol shifted uncomfortably. Unless Emily and Ryan's legal team already knows about this and is planning to use it as leverage. If they tip off the FBI about Daniel's crimes, they could negotiate immunity in exchange for cooperation. So my daughter and her husband weren't just thieves, they were sitting on a nuclear weapon aimed directly at me.
What are my options?
Legally, you could go to the FBI yourself, confess voluntarily, and hope for leniency.
You'd lose most of the money, but you might be able to keep the house. And if I don't?
Then Emily and Ryan's lawyers will leak the information at the right moment. You'll lose everything anyway, and you might even face charges for unknowingly benefiting from criminal proceeds. I thought back to Eleanor Hayes and her smug confidence, the way she acted like I'd fold under pressure. They must have known about Daniel's crimes all along.
Carol, how did they even find this out?
Ryan's an investment banker. He'd recognize the patterns in your husband's books. The real question is, what are they planning to do with it?
Right then, my phone rang.
Emily's name lit up the screen. Mom, we need to meet tonight. There are things you need to know about Dad that change everything.
I already know, Emily.
Silence.
Then, you know what? I know about the money laundering. I know about the criminal connections.
I know that everything your father left behind is dirty. Her voice dropped to a whisper.
Mom, listen carefully.
Ryan's lawyers are already talking to the FBI.
They're working on a deal.
Kevin gets immunity in exchange for exposing Dad's network.
You keep $5 million and the house. The rest goes to the government. And you? The fraud charges disappear. We all walk away from this. It was brilliant in a sociopathic way.
Emily had twisted my moral victory into her strategic advantage. Emily, you're asking me to help you profit from your crimes by cashing in on your father's crimes.
I'm asking you to be practical.
The alternative is losing everything and maybe even facing charges yourself. I looked around Daniel's study, the polished furniture, the rare books, the artwork.
All of it bought with blood money. I need time to think.
Mom, the FBI meeting is tomorrow morning. Ryan's lawyer needs an answer tonight. After she hung up, I sat alone in the darkness of Daniel's study, surrounded by the evidence of his double life. 43 years married to a stranger. And a daughter who'd inherited. More than his money, she'd inherited his talent for deception. But Emily made one critical mistake. She underestimated who I become when my back is against the wall.
I picked up the phone.
Carol, how fast can you get me a meeting with the FBI? I've got a story to tell them, and I think they'll find it very interesting. The next morning, FBI agent Sarah Martinez walked into Charles Whitman's conference room. She looked exactly like Central Casting's idea of a federal investigator. Sharp, serious, immune to charm. She sat across from me, recorder running, pen scratching notes with precise strokes. Mrs. Parker, you understand that by coming forward voluntarily, you're admitting you benefited from criminal proceeds?
I understand, I told her.
But I'd rather tell you the truth myself than let my daughter and her husband twist this to their advantage. Then I laid it all out. Daniel's hidden business empire, Emily's fraud scheme, Ryan's forged documents, and the extortion attempt dressed up as a settlement offer. Your daughter believes she can trade information about your husband's crimes for immunity from her own charges. That's exactly what she believes, I told Agent Martinez. She thinks I'll cooperate because I'm afraid of losing everything. For the first time, Agent Martinez smiled.
Are you afraid, Mrs. Parker?
Agent Martinez, 2 weeks ago I was a grieving widow in a budget motel. Today, I'm sitting here, voluntarily confessing to federal agents about my late husband's criminal empire.
Fear isn't what I feel anymore. Then what is it?
Anger. Pure, crystallized anger at being manipulated by people who underestimated me for decades.
Her smile widened.
Mrs. Parker, would you be willing to wear a wire? 3 hours later, I was in my own living room, a recording device taped under my blouse, waiting for Emily and Ryan to arrive for what they believed was a surrender meeting. At exactly 8 p.m., they knocked. Both were dressed like they were headed to a business dinner. Ryan carried a briefcase, probably stuffed with immunity agreements and settlement papers. "Mom, you look better than you have in weeks," Emily said, kissing my cheek like nothing had happened.
"I feel better. Clarity will do that to you."
Ryan opened his briefcase with the confidence of a man who'd closed 1,000 shady deals. "Linda, our lawyers structured this very favorably. You keep the house, $5 million in clean assets, and full immunity from any of Daniel's activities."
"Clean assets," I repeated. "That's an interesting phrase."
Emily shot Ryan a warning look. "Mom, the important thing is that we're all protected. The past stays buried, and we move forward." "What about the $33 million Daniel actually left me?"
"Mom, that money's tainted.
It's tied to Dad's criminal dealings. $5 million is the best outcome you'll get." "And what do you two get out of this arrangement?" Ryan leaned in, his old confidence returning. "We put this unfortunate misunderstanding behind us. Emily's charges disappear. My reputation stays intact.
And our family heals." "Misunderstanding,"
I said flatly. "You're calling felony fraud and extortion a misunderstanding?"
I looked at Ryan. "Tell me something.
When exactly did you discover Daniel's money laundering? Was it before you married Emily, or only when you decided to steal my inheritance?" They exchanged a quick glance.
"Linda, I don't think that's relevant."
"It's very relevant. Because if you knew about it and stayed quiet, that makes you an accessory. And if you only found out while committing your own crimes, that just makes you unlucky." Emily's composure was starting to slip.
"Mom, what are you getting at?"
"I'm saying this scheme didn't happen overnight.
The forged will.
The discovery of Daniel's laundering. Your connections to document forgers.
This was planned, maybe for years."
Ryan scoffed.
"That's ridiculous." "Is it?"
"Agent Martinez doesn't think so."
Their faces went pale. "Agent Martinez?"
Ryan whispered. "FBI," I said. "She's been very interested in my story about elder abuse, fraud, and extortion. Especially the part where you tried to blackmail me with my dead husband's crimes."
Ryan stood abruptly, reaching for his briefcase. "Linda, this conversation is over." "Actually, Ryan, I think it's just beginning."
Right on cue, Agent Martinez and two other agents stepped into my living room. Ryan froze, briefcase halfway open. Phones and papers were seized immediately. "Emily Parker Hayes and Ryan Hayes, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, elder abuse, and attempted extortion of a federal witness."
Emily turned to me, her face crumpling in betrayal.
"Mom, how could you do this to your own family?" "The same way you could forge documents and steal from me, sweetheart."
"Except my way is legal."
As the agents cuffed them, Ryan tried one last desperate card. "Linda, you don't understand what you've done. There are people tied to Daniel's business who won't appreciate federal eyes on them.
You've put yourself in danger."
Agent Martinez stopped mid-Miranda. "Mr. Hayes, are you threatening a federal witness?"
"I'm warning her about reality," he muttered.
"The reality," she said evenly, "is that you just added witness intimidation to your charges." Once they were taken out, Agent Martinez sat back down across from me.
"Mrs. Parker, Kevin's warning might not be entirely empty.
Your husband was connected to some very dangerous people."
"How dangerous?" I asked.
"The Torino crime family, mostly. They've been laundering money through legitimate businesses for decades. Daniel's consulting firm was one of their most successful fronts." The name meant nothing to me, but the look on Agent Martinez's face said plenty. "Are you telling me I'm in actual physical danger?"
"Potentially.
But there's something else you should know about your husband's operation."
"Something that changes everything."
She pulled out a thick file folder, the kind that meant months of work. "Mrs. Parker, your husband wasn't just laundering money for the Torinos.
He was working with us.
He was an FBI informant. For 12 years, he fed us intelligence while appearing to run their laundering operation." The world tilted sideways. Daniel, working for the FBI? Deep cover? The operation was so sensitive that even local offices weren't briefed, she continued. Your husband's information helped us build cases against multiple crime families. The money was real, yes, but we authorized him to keep a percentage both as payment and to protect his cover.
Everything he left you is legitimate.
I stared, trying to absorb it. So the 33 million is mine?
Legally? Yes.
Your husband's cooperation led directly to 47 arrests and over 200 million in seized criminal assets. He died before the investigation wrapped, but his work was invaluable.
Why didn't anyone tell me? Because the investigation was still live.
And we couldn't be sure you weren't involved. Ironically, your daughter and son-in-law's scheme helped confirm your innocence. Emily and Ryan didn't know any of this. They suspected crimes, but they had no idea about the federal cooperation. They tried to blackmail you with information that actually exonerated him. The irony was so sharp, it was almost poetic. Emily had tried to steal my inheritance twice, once with fraud, and again with blackmail built on half-truths.
So what happens now? I asked.
Now you get your money back. Your daughter and her husband face federal charges.
And you decide what kind of life you want to build with your legitimate inheritance.
As for danger, the Torinos will be too busy with their own indictments. We're executing search warrants across 3 states tomorrow morning. I looked around my living room, seeing it no longer as the stage of my humiliation, but as the site of my resurrection. Agent Martinez, can I ask you something?
Of course.
In your professional opinion, does it make me a terrible person that I feel satisfied Emily's been arrested? Agent Martinez actually smiled. Mrs. Parker, in my professional opinion, you're not terrible. You're a woman who refused to be victimized.
That's not terrible. That's inspiring.
6 months later, I was standing in my renovated kitchen, pouring coffee for 2. Sunlight streamed through new windows that actually opened, warming the countertops I'd chosen myself, for the first time in 43 years.
Good morning, Linda.
Dr. Sarah Chen, Carol's sister, and now my financial advisor, appeared in the doorway, arms full of reports.
Good morning, Sarah.
Ready for our quarterly review. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of court hearings, media appearances, and reinvention. Emily and Ryan were serving 18-month federal sentences.
And me?
I'd become something of a public face for senior advocacy. Your portfolio's performing beautifully, Sarah said, settling at my breakfast table. The foundation is fully operational. The scholarship fund has already selected its first recipients. The Linda Parker Foundation for Elder Protection had become my mission. I'd put 15 million of my inheritance into helping seniors fight financial abuse and pushing for stronger protection laws.
Any word on the documentary? I asked.
Netflix confirmed the deal. Filming starts next month.
My story had gone national.
The Mother's Revenge, an American crime story, was set to become a limited series, with proceeds going straight to elder advocacy organizations.
Sarah hesitated. Emily has written again.
Her lawyer says she wants to apologize.
To ask for forgiveness. 17 letters. That's how many Emily had sent from prison.
I'd read the first few, swinging between excuses and desperation, before deciding to stop opening them. Some bonds, once broken, can't be repaired with words.
Sarah, I asked, has my stance on that changed? Not according to what you've told me. But people can change, Linda. Even people who've made terrible choices.
I thought back to the woman I'd been 6 months earlier, broken, humiliated, pushed aside.
Grieving. Dependent.
Willing to take whatever scraps of dignity my family tossed my way. That woman might have felt pressured to forgive Emily, to rebuild something out of guilt and tradition.
But that woman was gone.
Sarah, schedule a meeting with Emily's lawyer, I said.
Not to reconcile, to make something clear.
What kind of thing? She asked. I want Emily to understand her choices came with consequences beyond prison time.
She destroyed our relationship. Permanently.
And her kids will grow up knowing exactly why their mother went to prison.
That seems harsh. Good. It's supposed to be harsh.
Emily made adult choices that hurt the people she was supposed to love. Writing letters from prison doesn't erase that. Sarah jotted notes in her leather portfolio.
And the grandchildren? She asked.
My relationship with them will be on their terms when they're grown. not part of Emily's rehabilitation plan.
The doorbell rang.
Through the window, I saw a delivery truck with a big box.
That must be the new furniture for the studio, I said.
Turning Daniel's old den into an art studio had been my favorite renovation. Bright, airy, filled with color, a space where I was rediscovering the love of painting I'd abandoned the day I got married and stepped into the role of selfless wife and mother.
Linda, can I ask you something personal?
Sarah said softly.
Of course. Do you ever regret how it all played out?
The prison sentences, the media spotlight, the permanent estrangement. I thought about it as I signed for my delivery. 6 months ago, I was invisible, a widow with no money, no home, and no future. Today, I was a millionaire philanthropist with a foundation, a documentary deal, and a purpose bigger than survival. Sarah, my daughter tried to steal everything I owned and leave me homeless. My son-in-law forged documents and threatened me with blackmail. They showed me exactly who they were when they thought I was powerless.
That's not family.
But they're still blood, Sarah said carefully.
No. They're DNA.
Family are the people who protect you when you're vulnerable, not the ones who exploit you for profit. Sarah closed her portfolio, satisfied. Besides, I added, look who I became when I stopped letting them define my worth. After she left, I walked through my house, arranged according to my tastes, reflecting my priorities. In the studio, I uncovered my latest painting, a self-portrait of a woman standing in sunlight, face turned toward the future. She didn't look anything like the broken widow who had packed her life into 2 suitcases 6 months earlier.
This woman looked powerful, independent, unafraid.
She looked like someone who'd finally learned that the best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming everything your enemies swore you'd never be. Outside, the sun sank behind trees I'd planted myself, in soil that belonged to me, on land I defended not through marriage or inheritance, but through intelligence and grit. Tomorrow, I'd keep building the life I chose, not the one others planned for me. And if Emily ever wanted a relationship with this woman, she'd need to bring a lot more than prison letters and hollow apologies. She'd need to bring a complete transformation, one that matched my own. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you've got a story like mine, share it in the comments.